Brenda, thanks for doing this. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And it's nice to meet you and finally get to see you here in your environment and everything. Let's start at the beginning. I understand that you're from a family of 7 sisters.
I am, yes. Best part of my life.
Well, tell me about your childhood and your parents. What was growing up like?
I probably have an ideal childhood, and we all adore each other, and we adored our parents. So, of course, we fought like normal siblings do, but there was a child every 2 years, and every time it was a girl, we cheered, so it was nice. But my dad was a factory worker, my mom was a stay-at-home mom most of our childhood.
Your dad worked at International Harvester?
Yes, he
right?
did. Yep.
What kind of values did your parents give you and the rest of your sisters?
I'd say the most important thing of my growing up was the good, solid set of values. And when people ask me, how did you do what you did? It really was, that was the core of it. So I think, growing up, we always knew you had to work hard. It was, both our parents worked hard, and, money wasn't flush, so we always had to make ends meet, which we did. And I was always admiring them for being able to have 7 kids and make it work for all of us. So work hard. The other thing is to treat everybody with respect. That's something I carried through my whole career and put it to practice as best I could. You don't judge people based on what they look like, who they are. You should really appreciate everybody and listen more than you talk. Those are, I'd say, 3 very important values that we got.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a sense of humility. Is that one of the things I read?
Yeah, very humble family. No one bragged about anybody. There's no competition between any of us. We just didn't like to talk about ourselves, and still don't, actually.
How did you come to go to Augustana?
Growing up, neither of my parents went to college, but education was a very important value that they had. So that it was instilled in us. And when we talk among ourselves, we don't ever remember them saying you will go to college. We just knew that's what we needed to do. So they encouraged us to do well in school, which most of us did, and get good grades and study hard. And then so college was a given. The question was where. And so my oldest sister went to Monmouth College, which is a small liberal arts school. Second one went there, and then I started looking around and decided to go a different direction. So I looked at other schools. Augustana happened to be one of them, and I fell in love with it.
What'd you study there? What'd you major in?
I was an economics major, double major economics and business administration.
When did you start to think that business would be the way you'd like to go for a career path?
I had no idea what I was going to do. I'm one of those people who went to college, had no clue. So in a liberal arts education, you get to take many things, and I came across economics, and then I'd worked in a florist shop growing up, and I loved the idea of making that place work better, the florist. So I knew there was something in the back of my mind that said, I like the idea of business.
Now, if I read correctly, your first job out of school was with Wilson Sporting Goods, is that right?
It was actually not right out of school, but I did start, that was my first, what I call a real job.
Uh-huh.
It was a recession when I graduated and had trouble finding a job, so Wilson was the first job I landed.
And what did you do there?
I worked in a distribution department. I planned inventory levels for the tennis business, so I worked with the marketing department and production schedule and just planned that all out.
Mm-hmm. When did you move to Frito-Lay?
That was after about 5 years at Wilson. I started realizing that I wanted to do more and I wanted to advance more, and I thought marketing would be a good place to work because I started doing that at Wilson. And I realized that consumer packaged goods was a better place to do it. So I started looking for a job outside of the company, and then found that I had the opportunity to go to either Pepsi or Frito-Lay.
Mm-hmm. And eventually you ended up at Pepsi.
I did.
And,
PepsiCo owned Wilson, owned Frito, so it was all the same corporate ownership.
Mm-hmm. And again, that was another marketing path right into
Right.
PepsiCo. Uh-huh.
Right.
What are the qualities of a good marketing executive? What kind of gut instincts do you have to have?
Well, this is where I tie back to my parents' teachings. Really, you really have to understand your consumer You don't just come in with ideas. You have to understand, what are they looking for, what do they need, what satisfies them. So it all starts with the customer first. So that's a key trait. You need to understand, what does the consumer want or need, and then find a way to provide it, and then how to communicate effectively.
And that served you well as you went up the ladder at Pepsi.
Yeah. Kept advancing, so I guess it worked okay.
What are your favorite memories of PepsiCo? Just
Oh
curious.
gosh, I have so many. I was with the corporate PepsiCo for 22 years. So I had opportunities. Every job I took, the most important thing was I had something I had to learn. So I kept building on my knowledge from the previous job, and I had the opportunity to keep doing different things. So, I was working on brand Pepsi when Coke reformulated. So that was a very memorable experience. How do you all of a sudden declare victory when your key competitor had to change their product to fight you? So that was an exciting time.
I remember that. And eventually you rose up to be president and chief executive officer at Pepsi Cola, the first woman to head that company. I know you've been asked this a million times, but what was that like for you to be the first there at a major company?
Well, I learned early on that you had to have something guide you and have a compass inside of you to guide what you did, how you did it. And I always felt that if I did good work, things would work out. So I focused on doing a good job, an effective job, and interacting with all the people in a way that I was a good person to work with, I think. So being the first, I didn't focus on the fact that I was a woman, but I certainly realized that I was in a spotlight. So internally and externally, all of a sudden, you get to be in that position. Everybody wants to talk to you and understand what you're like and why you got that position. So that was a little unusual for me.
But you were successful there and things were going well. And then you did something that just surprised everyone.
Yeah.
You took some time, I won't say time off because I'll get to that more in a moment, but you decided to step back and pay more attention to your family.
Right. I loved my job. I loved the company. I loved doing what I was doing. But here I had these 3 children that, as time went on, I realized, I was traveling a lot. My hours were very long, that I was missing a lot. So I often say this was a very selfish decision. I was doing something to satisfy me because the kids were okay. They were doing fine, but I wanted to be with them more. So I said, that means I have to leave knowing I may not work again, because at that time that was not a normal thing to do. So I said, okay, at this time in their lives, they were like 10, 8, and 7 at the time. I said, I'm willing to give up my job and hopefully get these years with my kids with more time. So I said I became famous for quitting my job.
I know I've seen a bunch of articles on that.
Yeah.
In the long run, the right decision?
Absolutely. I would do it 1,000,000 times over. Absolutely the best thing I could have done. It gave me perspective on everything. I got time with my kids. Again, they weren't suffering, but I benefited, and I like to think they did too. And in the end, I was able to go back, which is down the road a little bit, but I learned a lot during that time period too.
Well, I was going to ask about that because you didn't exactly go into exile. I mean,
No.
You were on a number of corporate boards like Avon, New York Times, Staples, and Lucasfilm, Starwood. That must have been very enriching, even after a long corporate career, to dip into other corporate cultures and other product lines and everything. It must have been incredible learning.
I had a wonderful opportunity, absolutely wonderful, because I had been a woman that achieved a level as an operating person at a pretty big company. So people were looking to have females on the board, plus I had achieved a good deal. So I describe it now like it was like going to graduate school. I had the opportunity, one, to say, okay, my skills and my knowledge does apply to all these different industries. I understood how boards worked or didn't work. They don't all work effectively. And so it really prepared me for what I was to do next. So I learned a ton, and I wouldn't trade that for anything. I think it prepared me for taking my Sara Lee job.
Really informed you about the next step. And Sara Lee was a very diverse company at that time, maybe a little too diverse, and that was one of the things you had to address when you went there. So wasn't too long after that you were at Sara Lee and became president and CEO. What were the challenges of that particular company at that time in its life?
The trends for the results were not good. The stock price had dropped, the sales growth had slowed, market share was going down. It was just headed in a bad direction. And it was a very diverse company, like you said, many, many businesses all around the world, and no cohesive direction on where that company was going. So the people in the company didn't feel like they knew what was going to be happening. So there was just a lot of change that was needed to get the company on course to be successful and leverage all the strengths that it had, which was good brands, great people, diverse geographic business. So we had a lot of opportunity, but just wasn't capturing it at that time.
And you had to find those products and those services that would actually bring the biggest rate of return back to the company and its shareholders.
Correct.
And that meant shedding some of the other attributes of the company.
Right. One thing that my past experience at PepsiCo and then my board work was, a company can't be excellent at every single thing in every single business. So the question is, what were our core businesses? Where could we add value and be competitive in the marketplace? So we started going through a process of sorting, where are those strengths? And I found out that we couldn't do them all. So we really had to focus and get to our core and become the strong company that we once were.
And how was that approach working when you were at the helm?
It was a very, very tough time period because we were going through massive change. Mm-hmm. Our shareholders didn't have confidence in us. I was under a lot of heat. Is she going to last? If you read the articles, you can see that it's not turning too fast enough, and is she going to last? But I knew a change of that scale and scope took time. You can't go in anywhere. No company can turn on a dime and make everything right. Mm-hmm. So we put in place a major change process, which involved culture, people selection, who was in the jobs and what places, and then sorting out which businesses would we succeed in. So it was huge change and turmoil in the organization. The people needed to have confidence that I was leading in the right direction. So there was an awful lot of time traveling the world, trying to get everybody to understand where are we going, why are we going there, what's your role in it, and what kind of culture do we want to build here. So that's pretty tumultuous for an organization.
When did you start to see results?
They started coming fairly quickly, actually. When I came in, it was down. It was terrible. Hit a low point that it was like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. But I had enough confidence based on what I saw and the plans in place that we could see coming out of it. So I'd say the first 3 years were really tough. And then by year 4 and 5, then we were coming out of it, and the outlook was really good. And the good news is I had the board's support. So that's a big part of the job I had to do, is give them confidence that we knew what we were doing and that the results would come.
So the company's on the right pathway. You're starting to see the metrics are coming back and
Mm-hmm.
It's looking good. And then you had this devastating incident happen.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about what happened?
Yeah, well, I was working very, very hard. I traveled. My kids now are growing up and going to college, and I'm in this job working long hours and traveling all the time. But enjoying it because you could see the fruits of your labor and you could see people were responding. And then one day I had some numbness go through the left side of my body, and I said, whoa, something's not right. So eventually I went through all kinds of medical tests and all that, and then found out that I had minor issues in my brain and ended up having a stroke. So that was unfortunately led to my retirement because I was in no condition to go back to work. I had to focus on getting myself well.
You went from someone, though, who was very physically active.
Yeah.
Well, it happened when you were at workout, and you went from treadmills, weight machines, everything. All of a sudden, you were someone who was very self-actualized. You were comfortable with yourself. You were the leader, and then you were in kind of a dependent mode.
Exactly. I was never sick. I don't think I ever missed work ever for being sick other than to have babies in my early days. But it was like a light switch went. And you go from being this person, totally self-sufficient, to all of a sudden you can't walk, can't hold your head up. I was in pretty bad shape. I almost didn't make it when the stroke hit. And what I found then was what's the real important things in life are the support of your family, your children, your sisters, the sisters I have, and friends. They really kept me going, and I ended up having a wonderful rehab in RIC, the firm I was rehabbing in, and came through. And I think okay now. My mind is okay. I can talk. I can walk with a little help. But the hardest thing absolutely was having other people have to help me. I just wasn't used to that.
And Erin, of course, your daughter, was marvelous. Tell me about what she did.
She had while I was in the hospital, she had graduated from Notre Dame to the point she wasn't even going to go because I was in a precarious position. So everybody finally encouraged her to go to her own graduation. And coming out of that, she had gotten a job with Campbell's Soup as a salesperson. So when this all happened to me, she found that she couldn't focus on her job and wanted to be with me to help me. So she talked to Campbell, and they were wonderful and said, go do what you have to do, and if you want to come back, let us know. So she took the next year and spent it with me. Living with me, helping me was amazing.
I saw that terrific interview that you both did. I'm going to see if I can get access to that clip and get that, because she was
so amazing. I mean, I was so proud of her. She had so much poise, and she was wonderful. All my kids were. They were all wonderful, and my sisters were wonderful.
And obviously, you determined at a certain point that I can't go on with the company. And could you describe what happened there?
Well, when I was in rehab and going through what's going on with me, I realized the requirements of being a CEO are extraordinary, and as they should be. And I said, I just don't see that I can get myself well and do the kind of job I need to do. So I had a discussion with the board and said, it's just, I hope to get better, but I don't know how long it'll take, and you need to move on. So we had a discussion and agreed that I would retire.
Mm-hmm. Big decision, though. You had to focus on what was best for you and to move on. And I've read that you've kind of looked at the process of redefining success.
Yeah.
Could you speak to that?
Sure. I had an interesting discussion with one of the therapists at the rehab center, and he said, when you're laying here and you can't do anything, what do you think about? I said, well, I'm thinking about I could really help this hospital with their strategic plan. I see things that could be done. And he said, well, did you ever think maybe you ought to think about yourself and think about a plan for yourself? So it was a real eye-opener to me. I said, I've worked since I was 15 years old. I probably should take this time to get myself well. So that's where I just said, I've got to take time and I've got to focus on getting better. And so that was a real eye-opener for me.
One of the things I've read in some of the interviews I've watched, it's clear you didn't feel sorry for yourself. You just, this is the hand I've been dealt. I'm going to do the best I can with it.
Right.
That's remarkable.
And I think, and I do feel really most proud of that I did take that attitude, because I was around many stroke victims, and it's a tough thing to go through. And sometimes your brain doesn't allow you to get there. I was fortunate that I could get my mind that, okay, I'm here, I'm alive. More than anything, I said, I'm alive, and I'm so happy I'm alive. I've just got to move forward, and I have to put my plan for myself and execute it. So, and I really have been very happy.
What kind of advice do you give people who might find themselves in the same situation you did?
Well, I tell people who aren't in my situation, I said, you have to really value life and view it with a positive attitude, because you never know when it can go away and how quickly it can go away. So the old adage of live each day to the fullest, I say that to everybody because in a flick of a moment, everything changed for me, everything. So for people who are in this situation, say your attitude's going to make all the difference in the world about getting better. You have to say, what will success look like? It's taking a step by yourself. It's being able to eat on your own. It's able to change a pair of clothes or something. That's what you have to really say, okay, if I get this, then I'll move to the next level. So it's a mindset, really.
How do you feel now?
I feel great. I really do. Health-wise, I feel really good. Knock on wood, I haven't had any episodes since then, and I feel fine. And so I also engage in things that are of my choosing. I'm not committed to a schedule and a job that's like a 14-hour-a-day job. So I have the privilege of picking and choosing where I get involved, and it's a great place to be. And I'm fortunate because I have enough money that I can do that. And I just try to figure out where can I still add value and play a positive role.
Well, what are some of those things you're working on?
Well, one thing that I did go back on was the Augustana Board of Trustees. I'd been on that a while back. I was board chair for a number of years, and I love the place. It gave a lot to me, and I like to see it give more to young people behind me. So I do that. I'm on that. And occasionally I'll do speaking engagements, some of the ones you've mentioned, but not a lot.
I saw there was a major gift for the new Center for Student Life there.
Yeah.
It's,
I give my time and my money.
yeah. That place has a very special appeal to you, though. It's
It
where you got
does.
started.
I grew up there. Yeah, I really did. My best friends in life are from there, people I met there, and I just think the world of what they transmit to the students in terms of their own values, how to think about things, how to solve problems, it benefited me. So I'd like to see it keep doing that.
I know you've been asked this, but I'll do it anyway. Do you still get the itch sometimes to go back into corporate life?
I do. I just had an instance this morning where there's a troubled company that was in the paper, and they were talking about it. And I said to my sister lives with me to help me out. And I said to her, I think I could go do that job. She said, what are you thinking? Are you crazy? I said, I know, stop me from even saying this, but so I do get itchy. I don't think I can ever go back to that kind of job, but I see it and I say, I still have the, I know I can help kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. What are the next things on your horizon?
I worried you might ask me that.
Mm-hmm.
I still have little goals. I'll call them little. I don't drive yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have that down the road when I can make sure that my vision and my left side can respond and all that kind of stuff. So that's a physical thing I'd like to do. I'd like to continue to spend time with my family and friends like I have been because I'm really enjoying it. And it's just a nice thing to take a break and have time to do that. And then I've been toying with how can I help young women in the workplace. I think my experience could help guide people, and that's why I sometimes do these speaking engagements. But I think, having been through it, I think it could help young women be more successful. But I don't know what that looks like yet.
I'm sure it will work out, and you will bring value to their lives and their experiences too.
That's what I would hope to, yeah.
Brenda, is there anything I haven't touched upon? I think we've covered most of the ground I came here for.
Well, you did a wonderful job. I could tell you're very prepared and
Thank you.
know me based on the questions you're asking.
Well, this is one of the gifts of working on this particular project. You get to meet all kinds of wonderful people, and you do want to find out a little bit about what makes them tick.
Yeah.
And to do the best job in helping tell their stories. So thank you. One thing I didn't ask: what did you think when you got the Lincoln call or the letter about the Lincoln Award?
First of all, I thought, why would they give that to me? Which is, humility is part of who I am. And I'm not just saying these things. I really say, gosh, of all the people that have been given this, why would I deserve it? So that was my first reaction. Then I thought, this is pretty cool. It was an honor, incredible honor.